Hola, bienvenidos. Hoy vamos a hablar con Avraham Shalev, que es investigador senior en Kohelet, la organización Kohelet de Israel, y es especialista en política pública internacional. Hello, Mr. Avraham Shalev. Thank you for being with us.
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, so recently you wrote an article about why the October 7th massacre should be classified as a genocide. Could you explain why do you claim that?
Right. So a genocide under international law, its definition is found in the Genocide Convention. And there it lists a number of acts, among them killing members of the group, mass killings, coupled with an intent to destroy the group as such. And so you need to look at Hamas's ideology. Hamas is an Islamic jihadist organization. It sees Israel, Palestine as exclusively Muslim territory. It sees any Jewish presence in this land as inherently illegitimate. And its goal is to destroy, to murder Israeli Jews as such. According to its original 1988 founding covenant or founding charter, its goal, the Islamic end of times will only come once every Muslim goes to kill a Jew. Hamas's charter uses traditional anti-Semitic language, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. It sees the struggle between Israel and the Palestinians as one that is as existential, that is religious in character, that is one of Islam against Judaism. And so we couple this with what actually happened on October 7th. We see a pattern of atrocities. The October 7th massacre included, the slaughter of hundreds of Israeli civilians. It included sexual violence, torture, humiliation that shows a pattern of dehumanization of Jews. And so when you put these actions along with Hamas's intent, we see that the October 7th massacre was not just a massacre, but was properly a genocide.
And why do you think now that the Israel they call it a genocide, just the Israeli response, but not what Hamas did on October 7th?
So the libel against Israel that it is committing genocide is the combination of two related trends. That first, in general, you have a pattern in genocides of reverse genocide accusation. Even now, Russia, as it is continuing its campaign against Ukraine, has many genocidal aspects. Right, it denies Ukraine any sort of legitimacy as a nation, as a people. Yet Russia justified its invasion of Ukraine based on a supposed Ukrainian genocide of Russian civilians or Russian ethnics living in Ukraine. Of course, during the Holocaust or before the Holocaust, the Germans, Goebbels claimed that the Jews had as a goal to exterminate, to destroy Germany. Similarly, in Rwanda and in Yugoslavia, there were claims that the Tutsis and that the Muslims intended to commit genocide against the actual genocidaires. So on one hand, you have this very common pattern. Along with this, you have this long-term phenomenon that's called Holocaust inversion. That since the 1950s, when the Nazi German ovens were barely cold, already the Soviet Union was claiming that the Israelis, that the Jews were the new Nazis, and they were behaving as brutally towards the Arabs, towards the Palestinians as the Nazis. And you have you have a long pattern of decades of claiming that Israel is committing genocide against the Palestinians, and this accusation, right, has such a moral weight to it. The idea that the Jews, the group that suffered the paradigmatic genocide, that they are now the new Nazis. This is a rhetorical hammer that is used against Israel. That's used to delegitimize the Jewish state.
Do you think that maybe there will be some people who say, okay, maybe Hamas tried to commit a genocide, but couldn't because the Israeli defending forces acted? But what would you say about that?
First, there isn't much of a difference legally between the attempted crime and the successful crime. You have from the case law in the International Criminal Tribunal for Yugoslavia a recognition that the success of a genocide, or the success of the perpetrators, is limited by the actual reach, by the actual capabilities of the perpetrators. So Hamas was only limited by its own limitations, by its own inability to kill more Jews as Jews, but its own limitation should not serve in its favor, should not give it favorable legal treatment.
So what do you think the international community or the UN also should do with this, and what do you think they are doing now?
So certainly, we first the narrative needs to be understood that Israel was victim of a genocide on October 7th, and Israel has a duty, as do all countries have a duty, to prevent and punish genocide. This is the obligations as found in the 1948 Genocide Convention. So what that means is that, first of all countries that have anti-genocide laws, for example, Israel has passed in 1950 a law based on the Genocide Convention. It should try and prosecute Hamas criminals based on this law. Hamas's main patrons, Iran and Qatar, are guilty of violating their duty to prevent genocide. They're not signatories to the Genocide Convention, but it can be argued that the Genocide Convention has customary legal status, meaning that it's binding regardless of whether countries have signed off to it. So potentially cases could be brought to the International Court of Justice against Iran and Qatar. And even if the International Court of Justice declines to take it, but there can be a international pressure against their main patrons, and then every country needs to crack down. They already have obligations against Hamas based on various anti-terrorism conventions which they've signed to close down Hamas's recruitment, propaganda, incitement, terror financing networks, and so these already exist as obligations. But now, based on the Genocide Convention, they have a renewed obligation to crack down on Hamas.
So, but when you see what's happening or what's going on, you see that many countries, France, Australia, they want to recognize Palestinian state, and you see that they are not doing what you are telling me now that they should be doing. So why do you think this is happening now?
Unfortunately, right, many countries are going specifically down the path that Hamas led. Several days after the October 7th massacre, Khalil al-Khaya, a Hamas senior official, spoke to the New York Times And he specifically said that we carried out October 7th in part to remind people of the Palestinian cause, to bring the issue back to the table. And this is exactly what is happening. The Hamas genocidaires are being rewarded with a Palestinian state, right? There's an argument that these countries that are recognizing a Palestinian state, that they naively make. They say, no, we're not rewarding Hamas. In fact, we're hurting Hamas. We're recognizing the Palestinian Authority. But Hamas today is by far the most popular Palestinian faction, the most popular party in Palestinian society, and certainly Palestinian society sees the fruits of the October 7th genocide as bringing them statehood. Right? They're essentially crowning Yahya Sinwar as the father of Palestine. And so this requires us to take a step back and to remember what actually happened, that there was a genocide here, and instead of meeting their international obligations to prevent and to punish genocide, they're in fact rewarding Hamas genocidaires with a state.
Yeah, and do you think really the Palestinians want a state? This is what they wish?
I believe that the ultimate goal of the Palestinian national movement is to bring an end to Jewish statehood. A Palestinian state in Gaza and Judea and Samaria is not the end goal. I mean, we see that in 2005, right? Israel took out all of its citizens and its military presence from Gaza, close to 10,000 Jews. Gaza was completely autonomous. Gaza could have been made into a state, and the response on the part of the Palestinians was to elect Hamas. And the chain of events that ultimately led to the October 7th genocide and to the current war has its roots in Israel essentially creating a Palestinian statelet in Gaza. And there's no reason, right? If Israel were to, God forbid, repeat this in Judea and Samaria, what's called the West Bank, then without a doubt, Hamas would again take power, and here it would use the strategic highlands to bring the war not to Israel's south, but to Israel's center, to Israel's main population centers, to its major cities.
So, what do you think is why the no? I don't want to say everybody, but why do you see in the media many governments or that they don't or they don't understand it, they don't want to understand it, or it's, do you think that anti-Semitism plays a role here?
Well, first, let's say to give a more charitable explanation, let's say, I don't think that enough people are aware of the scale and of the brutality of October 7th. Israel, based on its respect for the dead, for the victims' families, for the most part, did not release the horrific footage of October 7th. When you compare that to what has been seen, the real devastation in Gaza over the past 2 years. So you compare the emotional, let's say, or visual effect of the lack of visuals from October 7th versus what's happening with Gaza. But then you also have this notion of Palestinians as perennial victims, that they have no agency, right? Right away, almost immediately after the genocide, we heard calls. This means that we need to return to the table, return to peace talks, and this shows that we need a Palestinian state. As if Israelis didn't realize, if only we had thought of making peace. We never thought of that. But of course, Israelis thought of that. Israelis are unfortunately the victims of 2 decades of a peace process in which they have continuously made concessions towards the Palestinians, only to be met with Palestinian rejectionism. So you have anti-Semitism, you have traditional antipathy to Jewish statehood. You also have popular ideas of misconceptions of Israelis as some sort of European colonizers, Palestinians as perennial victims, to be very, let's say, coarse or simplistic. Israelis are white, Palestinians are brown, therefore Palestinians are right. And all this plays together into a propaganda war against the state of Israel.
So what do you think Israel is doing now? How is Israel is handling the war? Is doing the best it can? And what do you think should do Israel the day after the war?
On one hand, I don't want to give policy recommendations to the Israeli government in terms of handling of the war, but I can only say that since the beginning of the war, Israel's leadership has tried to balance between two, sometimes or often contradictory goals, which are the return of the hostages, of which 20 living hostages are still held in Hamas's torture tunnels, and of course the defeat of Hamas. And because of the desire to not endanger the hostages, then Israel has gone slower, has avoided certain areas in Gaza, has not prioritized a quick defeat of Hamas. But of course, as the war drags on without going into the remaining areas, then of course the difficult and harsh images from Gaza keep on coming out, and these continue to hurt Israel's legitimacy internationally. So I do believe that Israel should be prioritizing a quick victory in the war. And certainly, I mean, the talk of the day after is a result of what is actually achieved during the war. So it's very difficult to talk about a day after before the war is actually won. But I think that it needs to be clear that Israel hasn't sacrificed hundreds, if not 1,000 soldiers in order to hand Gaza over to the Palestinian Authority, which itself is a radical organization, which itself sponsors and funds terrorism, which incites to terrorism and anti-Semitism. So any day after in Gaza will need to include Israeli security control and a de-radicalization of Gazan society.
Mr. Shalev, thank you very much for being with us, and we hope for better days in Israel.
Thank you.
Thank you.